Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambo channel. I am on Bitcoinist.com right now. You gotta love this website. They're not always overtly anti-Ripple and anti-XRP, but I'm telling you, whether it's NewsBTC or Bitcoinist.com, let's just say that XRP isn't their favorite cryptocurrency, and Ripple isn't exactly their favorite company. So here's the article from them. It's titled Ripple and XRP, The Complete Guide. And I read this and I was like, oh, now this I've got to see. This is like Christmas to me. You know, a Bitcoiner, writing an article that is alleged to be completely comprehensive regarding the XRP ecosystem and Ripple, the company. My gosh, this is going to be awesome here. And so I read through this the other day, and I had tons of thoughts, and I'm sure it's going to come back to me as I run through a lot of this with you, but suffice it to say, this is nowhere near being a complete guide. They're not even talking about the building out of the ecosystem, the actual use case, how it genuinely functions, not really, and other developers building on top of the ledger, what Ripple is doing to build out not just the XRP ecosystem via their Spring initiative, not just the adoption of interledger protocol, but also the adoption, just embracing the entire cryptocurrency asset class and blockchain in general. They're missing, and that's just some off the top of my head here. But nonetheless, this is fun, and I think it's going to make for a super interesting video. So let's go ahead and dive in. Now, before I begin, if you would please delicately tap that like button, and if you would like to know what a Bitcoiner believes is a complete guide to Ripple and XRP, go ahead and subscribe to the Moon Lambo channel, because we are talking about XRP on here every day. That's how we roll. So, Pieces begins by stating a question. You want to know what that question is? What is Ripple? The name has been incredibly prominent within the cryptocurrency space for reasons both positive and negative. In short, Ripple is a payment protocol that facilitates fast, frictionless cross-border payments with minimal fees. This technology is based on a series of servers communicating constantly while maintaining a distributed ledger with the latest state of balances and transactions. The payment protocol also hosts its native asset, XRP, which acts as the chief medium for transferring value over the network. XRP, rebranded in late 2018, formerly bore the name Ripple. And one thing I will say it's fair to bring up is the confusing nature of XRP and Ripple. There was back in the day some conflating of the name, but since then it's been made very clear that Ripple and XRP are two very distinct, very different things, and so there's no excuse in the year 2020 to conflate the two. But fair enough point that the Ripple and XRP were used, unfortunately, interchangeably in the early days. It's just a fact. I don't like it, but whatever. Here we are. But we can do better moving forward, obviously. So how does RippleNet work? RippleNet is the latest iteration of Ripple's payment protocols. In late 2019, Ripple Inc. united all its products into one network, which could be used in various ways to transfer value. RippleNet allows for the usage and transfers of XRP, but there is also the option to generate value and liquidity without resorting to using the XRP asset. Fair enough, I'd say that's accurate. In the words of Ripple Inc., RippleNet is, quote, the most advanced blockchain technology for global payments, making it easy for financial institutions to reach a trusted, growing network of 300-plus providers across 40-plus countries and 6 continents. RippleNet works by potentially hosting multiple potential assets of value. The network hosts on-demand liquidity mechanism, which could allow transfers of value and exchanges across the world. And in 2020, RippleNet collaborates with more than 200 banks in various stages of exploration, and on-demand liquidity hosts around 15 companies, with more members taken on board. Well, the last number that was publicly cited was actually 24, so that'd be 24 right there. And no doubt many more have come online since that number was last cited, so they're a little behind here. Not 15. The network allows payments in any fiat asset as well as crypto assets, including Bitcoin. This set of features is impossible for Bitcoin and only slightly accessible for Ethereum. Bitcoin itself has stuck to its first layer solution using the BTC asset as a unit of payment. And so how is Ripple and XRP different from Bitcoin. Ooh, we're getting to the meat of it here. The past few years opened a competition between Ripple and Bitcoin. Ripple's protocols promise to displace the older, less technically advanced Bitcoin network, but the biggest challenge to Bitcoin was the fact that Ripple did away with mining and used a lighter form of encryption to avoid DDoS attacks, while also carrying virtually unlimited transactions. Now, I want to be clear here, when they're citing a lighter form of encryption, that makes it sound as though the XRP ledgers perhaps not as secure. Absolutely, and that could not be further from the truth right there. There's, in fact, okay, so what they said about DDoS attacks, perfectly reasonable. There's a reason that there is a fee associated with each transaction. Even if there's fractions of a penny, if you really want to spam the network, that would get really costly really quickly. And so nobody's really doing that right here. But you can't make... the worst you could do if you spam the network is to halt progress, so there wouldn't be forward progress, whereas if Bitcoin were under attack, in theory, then you could have double spins, you could have forward progress that isn't accurate, and that can't happen with the XRP ledger superior. So I'd say that you want to call it lighter encryption, maybe more secure and better encryption, I'd say that. Bitcoin's protection comes from transaction fees, but on certain days, even the Bitcoin network is overwhelmed by transactions. Bitcoin carries between 300,000 and up to 700,000 transactions per day, or up to 7 to 15 transactions per second. Look at that juggernaut, 7 to 15 transactions per second. That's blowing my mind. It's so many. Now, the Ripple protocol, however, is tailored to process up to 1,500 transactions per second. And that's the XRP ledger that they're actually talking about right there. The exact number of XRP daily transactions, however, is not as transparent. I dispute that. I don't know what you're talking about there. That just doesn't make sense. Let me jump down a little bit further. So how does XRP work? XRP is the native token of the Ripple network. Initially, the Ripple protocol was created in 2004, and this is where I enjoyed reading through this, with the intention of revolutionizing interbank transactions, but XRP appeared later, around 2013, when Ripple Labs started its activity, and the team took up Jed McCaleb on board as its leader, later bringing in new investors. Well, Jed McCaleb is a co-founder of Ripple, and technically XRP started to, the construction of it, the coding of it, that's probably a better word, construction of it, like it's a building, that started in 2012. Let me scroll a little further. The XRP asset was then conceived as having multiple use cases within the network. The immediate use case for XRP is to serve as a vehicle for carrying transactions by representing any type of asset. Using XRP is also required to pay network fees, where each transaction will erase 0.00001 from the ledger. This serves to avoid spam transactions in case transfers were entirely free. Well, the spam part that they cite there, that's actually correct right there. But as far as the immediate use case, look, XRP is designed to be a bridge currency. And so what they wrote there was wrong as far as represented any type of asset, unless they were talking about, and they weren't, but unless they were referencing the built-in decentralized exchange, in which case you can issue IOUs, which are representative of anything. It could be representative of Bitcoin. That's why people joke that the fastest way to send Bitcoin today is to send it on the XRP ledger. It's not that Bitcoin's actually jumping from the Bitcoin blockchain to the XRP ledger. It's just the case that it's being represented on the XRP ledger right there. And so that's very different here. But what really is going on is just XRP being utilized as a bridge currency rather than representing any other type of asset. So again, the Bitcoiner, nothing against them, but I guess they didn't quite have their facts straight there. XRP was envisioned with a total supply of 100 billion units, which are indivisible, unlike Bitcoin. Nope, that's absolutely not true. So Bitcoin is divisible by 100 million. XRP is divisible by 1 million. And that's why it's fun to take a look at, because if you consider how much more XRP is there compared to Bitcoin, the answer is about 4,700 times more XRP than Bitcoin. But given the rate, the way in which they're divisible, if you take a look at drops versus Satoshis, with a drop being the smallest individual portion of an XRP versus a Satoshi, which is the smallest individual unit within a Bitcoin, there's actually only 47 times as many drops as there are Satoshis. So it's actually, there's not way more XRP than there is Bitcoin. I don't think enough people really can appreciate that and understand it. But yes, XRP is divisible. And then they write, of those billions of units, millions were distributed in various stages of airdrops, preliminary sales, or private placements. XRP has been distributed to multiple owners, including banks, for testing. But the biggest XRP holder is Ripple Inc., which held 55 billion units with the aim of releasing them gradually on the open market. This process, however, may take more than a decade to complete. And so I think they're missing some facts here as well. I mean, technically what they said is right, but they could have been much more precise. In May of 2017, Ripple announced a 30-year plan to release, not literally all of their XRP holdings, but the vast majority, and this Bitcoin writer is unaware of that. So yes, more than a decade, that's fair, but not precise enough. XRP has tied Ripple Inc. to multiple players, including Jed McCaleb, as well as L3, a big early partner, which negotiated a vast XRP haul back at the time the asset was trading below a penny. And so here you go, XRP versus Bitcoin. That's the next subheading. So now let's get into it. Ripple has issued multiple challenges to the leading position of Bitcoin. The project was, in fact, already years ahead of Bitcoin at a protocol development level. Yet Ripple did not think of linking itself to the world of digital assets, at least not before Bitcoin had already established its success. Well, it depends on what you're saying there. Yes, Bitcoin existed first. What's your point, though? The involvement of Jed McCaleb was what brought Ripple into the world of cryptocurrencies. From that point forward, the competition between Ripple and Bitcoin intensified. Okay. Jed McCaleb's the individual that came up with the concept of the consensus mechanism, and then he brought on board David Schwartz, who was co-creator of the XRP ledger, and they, along with Arthur Brito, created it. But the competition between Ripple and Bitcoin intensified as a result. What do you mean there? And then the next sentence reads, this was the time that the narrative of Ripple and its protocol making Bitcoin obsolete started to appear and be repeated. Okay, well, either Bitcoin's useful or it's not. Forget whether or not XRP exists. Either Bitcoin is useful or it's not. And today, in 2020, it's not useful. It's not. It's just not being used for anything unless you want to make the store of argument, which I think is not valid in and of itself. So as far as the competition between Ripple and Bitcoin intensifying, look, the cryptocurrencies both can be used for the same purposes. Technically, you could use Bitcoin as a bridge currency instead of XRP. It would just be slow and costly. But given that it's a decentralized blockchain technology and has an open market value, you could use it. And you could also use XRP for the use case that Bitcoin was originally envisioned for, which is a peer-to-peer cash system. You can use them interchangeably. It's just that Bitcoin is not being positioned for that use case, and XRP is not really in a meaningful way being positioned to be used in place of cash. So when you say competition, as far as the developers building on top of the blockchain or the ledger, very different use cases. So to what degree do you mean they're competing? Are you talking about in terms of market cap? Because that doesn't really tell me anything in terms of real world adoption anyway. And again, completely different use cases. So that doesn't make sense to me, but that's the way that I perceive many Bitcoiners out there looking at this, as if XRP is some sort of a competitor, a threat. And that's why you get a lot of the vitriol out of it. Not that this article is vitriolic, I'm not saying that, but that's where you get a lot of it from. And then it continues, but Ripple's asset was still hovering at sub-penny prices, while Bitcoin had already made its forays into four-digit territory. Bitcoin was going through its own growth pangs at the time, with the challenges of mining starting to bring in larger business interest. The Mt. Gox scandal also scarred the reputation of Bitcoin, showcasing some of the big risks involved in the new world of cryptocurrency. But as the years passed, the growing trading ecosystem brought Ripple's reputation to fight that of Bitcoin. While the Bitcoin community spread more slowly, with significant skepticism and setbacks, Ripple was positioning itself deliberately, building a strong community and a new narrative. But by the time 2017 rolled in, Ripple was ready to make its biggest attack, the aim to displace Bitcoin. Okay, that's not what the company is focusing on, positioning XRP to do. Now, I think inevitably that would happen because utility matters and XRP is actually used for something. I think people will figure that out over time. But they call it, look at the way that they're framing this. That's a quote, biggest attack. Okay. So the aim to displace Bitcoin, both in terms of market capitalization and usage, became central and drew in many true believers. Around that time, Bitcoin was also going through a mining boom, which showed how costly its production was. Ripple positioned itself with a system that did not require that much electricity while promising to be more scalable. Yes, you're getting to the truth there finally. XRP is technologically superior. Exactly. Mining is already, it's obsolete at this point. You don't need it. There are other ways to solve the double spin problem. You just don't need it. The years in development, in addition to big promises and an overall bull market, pulled out the XRP market price from its sub-penny positions and into a growth boom unseen before. Of course, yeah, sure, but that's the altcoin market also. It's not just XRP. Because really, most of this is speculative, the price action anyway, not really based so much on utility. Not today, but it's going to be... Fast forward 10 years, all right? True believers were ready to even abandon Bitcoin for the chance of owning an asset that aimed to make Bitcoin obsolete. And again, it didn't, but you know what Bitcoiners think, right? Around 2017, Ripple was known as the coin for the banking industry, and ironically took to the task of creating the banker's coin. This paradox for Ripple went against Bitcoin, the Bitcoin ethos, which was about independence and offering people an alternative to banking. But again, if a cryptocurrency is sufficiently decentralized, you can use it for whatever you want, which is why I think that calling XRP a banker's coin is kind of a nonsensical thing to state. Use it for whatever you want to use it for. Now, Bitcoin aimed to create a censorship-resistant, globally distributed community which was entirely open source, but the nature of the network, which indeed turned out to be slower than Ripple, ended up reinforcing the belief that the Bitcoin protocol was obsolete. And I argue it already is. Those narratives were immediately reflected in trading activity, and Ripple's asset achieved several spikes against Bitcoin over the years. And so they go on to talk about price in this, and it's purely speculative. Like, they're missing it, as if this has something to do. I mean, it does technically have something to do with the way that XRP is being positioned by developers. Fine, but most of the price action still, it's just following Bitcoin. It just is. And so the way they're looking at this, to me, it doesn't make any sense. And so, again, this is supposed to be the complete Ripple and XRP guide, and they haven't gotten into the developers building on top of the ledger. They haven't gotten into specifics of the use case. They're just talking about how it's technologically superior to Bitcoin. That's basically what's happening. And then they start talking about Ethereum here. Does Ripple compete with Ethereum? Oh, Lord. One hell of a complete guide, guys. I'm telling you. Ethereum, in its latest use case, has transformed itself into a platform allowing for tokenization and asset representation. Ethereum is offering second-layer solutions with the aim of switching to a system of staking, which in a way resembles the communication between Ripple validators. Ripple's protocol has the potential to take over multiple use cases that now belong to Ethereum. The RippleNet usage can build up features that now exist throughout multiple Ethereum projects, including decentralized exchange for crypto-based assets, and there is a built-in decentralized exchange on the XRP ledger, forex exchange by representing fiat currencies, fintech and payment ecosystems to compete with banks and international remittances. But again, they're not being, Ethereum and XRP are not really functionally being positioned to do the same things, even though technically, if you want to use Ethereum as a bridge currency, sure, you can. There's a reason nobody's doing that, though. Don't make no damn sense to do that. And then they have this section here. Why Ripple rebranded its asset? Well, it's not Ripple's asset, but again, Bitcoiner. For years, XRP was known as Ripple, but in late 2018, the public profile of the asset worsened. For one, early investors started asking questions on what the use case was for the coins they received or bought. So they look at the narrative. So people bought this stuff, and then they're like, what the hell did I just buy? What does this thing do? My God. Oh, man, come on. Did you do that? You listening? Did you do any research at all about XRP? I mean, maybe there were some that the crazy run in 2017 that were buying a bunch of coins, not doing anything. But really, do you think that there's this situation where tons of people bought this and are like, wait a minute, what does this do? I'm angry. I don't like what this is being positioned to do. Like, is that a thing? I don't think so. All right, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission moved in to question Ripple on the role of its assets. The connection between the activities of Ripple Inc. and the market price of its native token was put under question. Investors realized Ripple had been using its token to raise funds, thus raising suspicions it was in fact selling a security. Well, Ripple's not an issuer of XRP. They have XRP, and if they want to sell it to others, they have the right to do that. It's not a security, and the XRP ledger is decentralized. It's more decentralized than the Bitcoin blockchain. And Ripple, however, wanted to deny explicitly that the performance of XRP was tied in any way to the company and represented a form of shares into its business, and hence the asset used its ticker symbol as its name and altered its logo for a new impression. The asset was then framed as a form of goodwill and an airdrop to popularize the case for Ripple. As far as the airdrop, I don't know what they're talking about there. While Ripple takes care to observe how XRP trades and is distributed, the company's chief work is related to the Ripple protocol and not to directly supporting XRP and XRP owners. Well, it's not about supporting retail speculators, but it's incorrect in stating that they're not supporting the XRP ecosystem, because they absolutely are, but they didn't even get into the Spring Initiative in this. And so this is already the vast majority of what I wanted to cover. They do go into who is Jed McCaleb, which wasn't as interesting, so I'm going to hop over that. They have the subheading here, is Ripple a better investment than Bitcoin? And of course they mean XRP, and with this being a complete guide, you'd think they'd use XRP instead of Ripple, but they didn't. So there you go. There is no certain way to say which asset will be a better investment. Are you sure about that? Bitcoin has a vast trading network with spot markets and futures, while Ripple's XRP trades in much smaller batches. Well, look, we're in the nascency of this asset class. All of that, and the way that traditional finance works, it's all getting built out around the crypto ecosystem, including XRP. I'm not worried about that. And then they go to talk about people saying that, hey, XRP going to $589, this or that, and they cite that XRP low 20-cent range and stuff like that. So as far as which cryptocurrency is going to be a better investment? Well, look, I'm not offering financial advice, but if I had to guess, I would definitely say XRP. And then other than that, they have this little section called Where is Ripple Now? But I think I'll wrap it up here, because as you can see, the quote-unquote complete Ripple and XRP guide is nowhere near being complete, and there's a bunch of inaccuracies in the article on top of that. And they're still conflating Ripple and XRP in this article, even after acknowledging that it's different. Bitcoin, everybody, Bitcoiners. I like running through this. Like, to me, this is a lot of fun. Like, just seeing the way that people are looking at stuff. And I tell you what, nothing against the author, but they could definitely stand to do a little bit more research before writing about Ripple and XRP again. But that's it for this video. I am not a financial advisor. Do not buy or sell anything, because if anything I say or write, that would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo.